Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. In this video, a Karen neighbor broke into my house just to use my toilet. Let's dive right into the video. The first one starts like this. I value my privacy as most people do. I live on a very quiet neighborhood as I've never been one for the bust and chaoticness of city life. I would rather have a small barbecue with a few friends than a loud night out at the club. But above all, the first thing is always important to me, which is my privacy. I grew up in a foster home, so I never really had any privacy and it seeped into my adult life. So now I really value being able to live on my own and be at peace knowing that I choose when other people can enter my space. My neighborhood has never had any break-ins or anything, and to be honest, sometimes I leave my door unlocked for the most part of the day and nothing has ever happened. Probably not a good habit, but hey ho. I learned my lesson one day a few weeks back when I was working from home. I work upstairs in my office and usually have some music playing in the background, so it took me a few minutes before I heard a noise coming from downstairs. It sounded like the creak of my floorboards downstairs, and once I had recognized that noise, I was obviously sent into panic. I thought someone was breaking in, and in a way, they were, but at least they were not robbing me. I crept downstairs, turning the corner, when I heard noises coming from my bathroom. I won't be too specific, but it was noises of someone using the toilet. Obviously, I was in shock. What on earth was someone doing in my loo? Hello? I asked, still a bit scared of whoever was in my home. Yes, a woman replied. Can I ask what you are doing here? No, you most certainly cannot. It's very impolite to ask a lady what's going on in the lavatory. The woman snarked back, and until she came out, I wondered if she was older than she sounded and was just confused, having wandered into the wrong house. So, going with that assumption, I didn't say anything else and waiting for her to come out. However, when a middle-aged and seemingly of perfect mind woman came out of the bathroom, I was confused once more. Why are you in my house? I asked, a million thoughts running around my head. Are you thick? I was using the toilet. She laughed, walking into my kitchen to use the sink. She had used a spare bathroom that does not have a sink. In my house? I asked again, wondering why she wasn't watching on that. I obviously had a problem with her intrusion. Is there a problem with that? She asked as she began washing her hands using my soap. Yes. And what is the problem? You've just trespassed into my home. What do you mean, what's the problem? I couldn't believe how this conversation was going. I'll have you know that it is my human right to use the toilet. Yeah, well, not mine though. You cannot just break into any house and use the loo. The door was unlocked, and besides I come in here all the time on my walks. You what? I felt sick at the knowledge that she's just been coming and going as she pleased to use the toilet in my house. Who even are you? The name is Karen, and you cannot just tell me that I cannot use the toilet. It's my house and you're a complete stranger. What about this is normal to you? She ignored me, and that's when I heard her stomach rumble and she dashed back into the bathroom. Are you kidding me? I shouted through the door. What was wrong with this woman? I heard her rummaging through the cupboards in my bathroom, which made me feel even more uncomfortable. Who did she think she was to violate my privacy and personal belongings like that? Stop whatever it is you're doing, I yelled, banging on the door. Listen, I had no choice. When you have to go, you have to go. Stop being so unreasonable. Unreasonable? You have broken into my home, which is illegal, in case you're not aware. Again, it's my human right to use any toilet I please. Now please stop being weird and leave me in peace. It's your human right to use any public toilet, not a toilet on someone's private property. And I'm not being weird. Again, you're the one who has just entered my home without permission. This back and forth went on for a while. She really couldn't see why entering someone's home without permission was so unheard of. I even brought up the fact that she had really been desperate and came to my door. I'm sure I would have let her use it, but obviously it's unacceptable to just enter. Even as I'm writing this, I'm finding it hard to believe this actually happened. If you don't walk away right now, I'm gonna sue you for the emotional distress you're causing me, Karen yelled through the door. What? You're causing me more distress. How? I'm not violating your human rights. Yes, you are. One of my rights is to have the full ownership of the land and properties that I own, and you cannot just dictate whether I do or don't have rights to my own assets. This woman was gonna be the death of me. I heard her flush the toilet and then begin rummaging through my stuff again. I knew she was not in the nude anymore, so as wrong as it might be, I started filming her actions through the small hole in the top of the door. I wanted evidence of this surreal experience, maybe to present to the police or something. Are you gonna leave? I asked through the door. Nope. Once I'd filmed her rooting through all my items, making a massive mess by the way, I came up with a plan to get back at her and hopefully get her out of my house. I pretended to call the police, walking away slightly so that she could only just hear me talking. I spoke about the whole situation and explaining what Karen was doing and how she had entered my home without permission. Overhearing my conversation, Karen quickly opened the door and bolted for the front door. But at this point, I've locked my front door. Again, I know this is maybe morally wrong, but I wanted a bit of revenge for her lack of respect for my home. "Hey, let me out!" Karen demanded, panic lacing her eyes. "Well, go and clean up the mess you made," I stated with a shrug, leveling her with a glare. "But when the police—" "I didn't actually call the police, you idiot, but I will if you don't go in there and clean up your mess." "What? Well, you would have no proof anyways." She smirked at me, clearly deciding she had won the argument. I sighed and turned my phone around, showing her the video. "You pervert! How dare you film me in the bathroom?" "Relax, I'd waited until after you had blown up my toilet." "How rude, that is not what I was doing." She gasped, her cheeks going red. "Your actions are incredibly unacceptable, and from the way you just reacted to thinking the police were on their way, I think you know it too. You need to respect people's properties and boundaries, as in, don't just enter people's homes." Karen looked angry at my scolding and opened her mouth to speak before I beat her to it. "If I ever catch you in here again, I'll not hesitate to call the police and let them know just how many times you've been doing this." There was a little bit more back and forth, but she clearly realized now that she had been in the wrong and muttered a small apology before doing a half-assed job at cleaning up the mess she had made in the bathroom. She left my house silently, a bit of loo roll stuck to the bottom of her foot, which was rather funny to watch as she walked away with her head down in shame. I felt glad that she was gone and had hopefully learned her lesson, but you can be sure that I started locking my door from then on. And by the way, I deep cleaned my bathroom. The idea that a stranger had been in there just made me feel icky. I shared the story with the neighborhood watch group, letting them know to be careful of that woman in case she moves on to another house. I kept the video to myself as I thought it would be a little too mean to expose her, but what do you think? Maybe I should have to have the final word. And the next one is a super wholesome neighbor story. 3 years ago, a woman named Cassie, 32 female, and her son Kenny, 13 male, moved into the apartment next door. They had a few boxes, so I figured I, 31 male, offered to help and get off to a good start. I noticed Kenny had a PS4, so I told him that I game as well, and he was free to come over and play my systems anytime he wanted, if his mother allowed it. I got a PS5, Switch and PC as an FYI. Since I'm a mechanic, I told Cassie if she had car troubles she could come to me anytime, since I help out a lot of other people on the floor with their cars as well. She accepted, and I didn't really interact with either Kenny or Cassie besides a few hays for a few weeks initially. But a little more than a month after moving in, Cassie knocked on my door and asked if I could check her car because the engine was not turning over. And well, it turns out the spark plugs needed to be changed, which was easy enough to do. Cassie was very thankful for my help and offered to pay, but I told her it was no problem. She invited me to dinner with her and Kenny, and I was hesitant to accept, but she insisted on it. The next day we had dinner. It was a good time. I learned a lot about her and talked to Kenny more. He is a good kid, really into games, science and his guitar. We even all went over to my place for some Mario Kart, and from then on I got really close to Kenny. I viewed him like a little brother. He came over to play my games almost every day, and I even started teaching him about cars. I've even brought him to my shop to introduce him to tools. He's a quick study, and he even told Cassie that he wants to become a mechanic like me. I told him to aim higher and become an engineer. He is now even looking into engineering programs. I think Cassie really appreciated our relationship. She became a lot more friendly with me. I got infected during the lockdown. Out of the kindness of her heart, she brought me groceries, cleaned my apartment, and even took care of me. I was totally grateful. She even cooks dinner for me every night, and we all have dinner together. She even makes dinner for me when I work late and leaves it in my apartment. The other day, Kenny brought one of his friends over to his apartment. I met the friend and he said, "This is OP, he's like my dad." Not gonna lie, that took me by surprise. I always viewed Kenny as my little brother, but there he is saying that I'm like a dad to him. I asked Cassie about this and she seemed surprised I even asked. She said that she would never force that role on me, but that he did view me as his father. He even hoped that me and Cassie would get together so that we can be a real family. Cassie then said she wouldn't mind that either. I asked her if she was asking me out. She just smiled and said yes. I was surprised but said okay. We have a dinner date this weekend and I'm nervous as all hell. I don't want to ruin things with Cassie and or Kenny. I really do love both of them, but I'm not sure how I feel about being the father figure for Kenny. It's a lot of responsibility and I'm not entirely sure I'm the guy for that. And Cassie, she's a really amazing woman. I just hope I can measure up to her expectations. I'm just asking Reddit, are my worries unfounded? Should I put some boundaries between me and Kenny? How do I not screw this up with Cassie? Update, so there are some things to clarify before we go to the update. People were asking me if I'm actually attracted to Cassie, and the answer is yes. She's one of the strongest, nicest, most considerate people I know. She constantly puts people before herself, and I always wish that someone would put her first for once. And did I mention that Cassie is super pretty? I guess I just never thought Cassie would find me attractive or be interested in me that way. Now the update, I was nervous as hell all week leading up to the date on Saturday. During our usual family dinners, Cassie smiled at me a lot more. I don't think Kenny noticed since he was too busy playing on his phone. Cassie not so subtly suggested to Kenny, 13 male, that he go spend the weekend with his grandparents. He did not really want to, but she pretty much pushed him out of the door. On Saturday evening, I knocked on Cassie's door and she opened it up wearing an absolutely beautiful dress. I broke the tension and asked if that dress was for me. She laughed and we went on our way. The evening was a little awkward at first, but when we were walking to the restaurant, she grabbed my hand and smiled at me, and it sort of got rid of the awkwardness. From there, the evening went amazingly. We talked, laughed, and had a great dinner. I asked her what made her change her mind about me, and she said it was the previous Christmas. For reference, though, Cassie is a hardworking single mom, and Kenny has all of his needs met and more, but she cannot afford to get him the best, and it really hurts her that she cannot. She really wanted to get him a PS5 since he was begging for one, but couldn't justify the cost. Since I have disposable income, I hunted for months, checking stock drops until I finally got one. I then surprised Kenny with it on Christmas and told him it was from his mom. Cassie was shocked and even started crying. Kenny was so excited he didn't even notice her crying. All she could tell me was thank you repeatedly. Apparently that made her realize that she wanted me in both of their lives forever. She tried to deny her feelings, but it didn't work. The conversation the other day was the opening she needed to finally confess how she felt. After dinner we went back to her place for a nightcap. We talked a lot about relationship expectations and how we wanted to proceed. We agreed to be exclusive, to take it slow, and to not tell Kenny about anything until we are sure that this relationship is real and strong. We don't want to give him unrealistic expectations. She also said that her calling me his dad was too much too soon, and she apologized for it. She said it was wishful thinking on her part and probably would have weirded out most people. She said to accept any role with Kenny that I wanted, but she hoped that I would see Kenny as a son eventually. Sorry to disappoint everyone, but we didn't do the deed. We decided that it was much too soon. We did, however, have a bust makeout session. The following day we went for brunch and decided to go apple picking. It felt damn good to be walking hand in hand with someone you care about and taking lots of pictures doing silly things. At our family dinner yesterday, Cassie sat close to me and was rubbing her foot on my leg. I don't think I've ever been more turned on in my life. I'm not gonna lie guys, I think I'm falling for Cassie and falling hard. Well, anyway, I think that's it. We're together now and hopefully this lasts. Also, I don't think I want anyone else. Cassie is everything one could want in a partner and I hope that I can be worthy of her. She is a really special person. Thanks everyone, you are all so kind. And now let's move on to the next one, which is titled Entitled HOA Douchebag. This is the story of my entitled neighbor Bob. We live in an HOA, I know, and Bob lives across the green space from us. Bob's entitlement was evident almost from the moment we moved in. About a month after we moved in, the police, sheriff and DEA came knocking at our door. Bob had called them and told them we had lawn bags full of cannabis in our garage. It's important to note here that I use medical cannabis. Bob runs the local Narcotics Anonymous group. Well, I gave the cops the ground tour of our home and there was nothing here at all. They apologized for the intrusion and left. A week later, our landlord called because Bob had called him, saying we had a grow operation going here. Our landlord knew he was lying because the landlord had just been here. Bob was trying to get us out of the neighborhood because he cannot have that crap in his neighborhood. He gave up on that when my daughter and her husband purchased the property. Then he started with the constant complaints and demands. We were not allowed to feed the squirrels because it made a mess and we couldn't plant clover because it might get in his yard. We had to mow more frequently because he mows twice a week and we only mowed once and it looked bad. The list goes on and on. He mows the green space between our houses every time he mows his lawn, killing all the wildflowers and tells people that they cannot walk there because he mows it so it is his. The worst of this entitled behavior started 2 years ago. He decided he was gonna stop using his furnace and burn wood instead. Now, I have lung cancer and my next door neighbor has COPD, so this was really bad for us. In January 2022, we had a stagnant air warning, which means you can only use wood stoves or fireplaces if that's your only source of heat. Bob did not care, and the thick smoke from his wood stove blanketed the neighborhood. One morning, I woke up unable to breathe. My daughter called for an ambulance, I stopped breathing and had to be intubated. I spent 6 days in a medically induced coma and another week in the hospital. My kids tried talking to him, I tried reasoning with him, but he didn't care. He said he was allowed to heat his house any way he saw fit. We called the county and they told him his wood stove was outdated and needed to be replaced. He said he would replace it, but 2 years on it still hasn't happened. The final straw for me was when another neighbor and I had an argument. It was all of 2 minutes and resolved the next day. He came over screaming at me because he was not putting up with the crap in his neighborhood. And then he screamed at me that it wasn't fair that I got disability, cancer, and he had to work all day. A month later, he was suddenly in too much pain to work. So he went on disability from his job, spending his time climbing on his roof, working on his motorcycles, mowing his yard every other day, and generally just enjoying not having to work. Someone he worked with turned him in for fraud, and we had investigators out here taking pictures of his activities around his house. I made sure to have a chat with them myself. And yeah, Ripe Stars, this Bob guy sounds like a truly nightmarish neighbor. I'm so glad I don't have neighbors like this. Anyway, the next one is a malicious compliance HOA story. Our last house was in an HOA. Our garage had our 2 pickups in it, but my husband's mechanic truck was too long to fit in the driveway without being over the sidewalk, which was against HOA rules, so he could not park it in the driveway. He parked it in front of the RV gate that had a gravel driveway. Well, one day we got a violation letter for parking on the landscaping in front of the RV gate, so I called and spoke to the HOA manager Miranda. She said that if we wanted to park there, we had to pave it. I asked her, so you're telling me that we have to pave it? She said yes, so we paved it. Then we get another violation letter a couple weeks later, this one accompanied by a fine, saying we need to get permission to pave the driveway. When I called up Miss Miranda again, I told her that we were not responsible for paying the fine, nor did we need to ask for permission because her literally telling us to pave it was giving us permission. She tried to argue against that, citing some HOA bylaws about applications and approvals and some such nonsense. I was not having it and told her that if she wanted people to follow the rules, then she should not tell people to break them. She was pissed but ultimately dropped the whole thing because she knew she had messed up. And the next one is a story from r/am I the a-hole. So I never thought I would be in this position, but I'm the one who sought out the 75-year-old members of the HOA board for assistance. Having said that, I feel like I was very patient and accommodating, but just got pushed too far. But still, anytime you call the HOA, you might be the a-hole. My neighbors started out in February and March with a bouncy castle in their yard. I couldn't see it, but I could certainly hear it when the kids would start bouncing at 4:30 or 5 AM. It honestly seemed that the kids would wake up really early and the parents would send them outside so they could sleep. But it was incredibly loud. I had a polite conversation with the parents and they assured me the bouncy castle was temporary. I put up with it for probably 3 weeks, nearly every day, until I explained that I work nights and I was being woken up right as I was getting to sleep. To their credit, they stopped jumping early in the morning and everything was fine until 3 weeks ago when a huge bouncy castle suddenly appeared in their backyard. It was at least 25 feet tall, it completely blocked my view of the mountains. I could see the kids were able to look right into my bedroom window from the top. Unfortunately, this coincided with a shift change for me, and now the kids were up until 11 or 12, even 1 AM on some nights, and now I had to wake up at 4:30. I did not even realize it was also a water slide until I realized that probably hundreds of gallons of water had run under our shared fence and actually pushed all my dog's poop up against my back door. I went over and talked to them and the dad essentially said, "We were polite enough to change our schedule for you the first time and this is our backyard, so F you." I decided something had to be done because potentially my house could be damaged, let alone the sleep issue. So then I called the HOA and however the machine works, my neighbor had been called in front of a board meeting, fined about $1,000 for covenant violations, as well as been ordered to pay for damages to our joint fence. I thought everything was good except for some dirty looks from the neighbor, but literally every one of my family and friends are saying that I'm the a-hole for going to the HOA. While opinions vary, the general gist is I'm now the crappy neighbor ruining kids' fun. Also, that I should have gotten some noise-cancelling headphones and ignored it, and they would have popped the slide at some point anyways, and it would have taken care of itself. The idea, I guess, is that I tattled and got my way by unleashing a bunch of busybodies with too much time and too much undeserved power. Am I the a-hole, Reddit? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think that OP is the a-hole here or not? Someone on Reddit said, not the a-hole. I don't typically side with snitches, but this is pretty clear. The early hour noise and the damage to the property are big no-nos. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. Honestly, going to the HOA is the bare minimum here. This is actually proper use of the HOA, which by the way guys I would agree with, and these neighbors were putting your quality of life and possibly quality of your property into jeopardy. I'm honestly really worried for the kids. These are very irregular and ungodly early and late hours for them to be outside seemingly unattended. The parents honestly sound negligent and decided to make them the neighborhood's problem rather than actually parent their kid. This makes me wonder whether calling CPS should be next on your list of calls. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would definitely agree with that. These hours seem to be very weird for kids to be outside alone without any parental supervision, especially when they are bothering everybody. So therefore I would say OP is definitely not the a-hole, especially considering that these people damaged his property as well. Either way, let me know what you think in the comments. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.